with strawberries.
Wait, what?
Strawberries?
No, before that.
My smooth jazz playlist is called Let's Get Sexual.
No, after that.
Oh, Jumbo Bucks instant games from the Tennessee Lottery?
Yeah.
Well, you can't win 75 grand from jewelry.
I could win 75 grand?
If you're lucky.
Oh, baby.
Make this Valentine's Day one to remember with Valentine's Day Jumbo Bucks, only from the Tennessee Lottery. Game-changing fun.
It's still a little cloudy out right now, but some sunlight is starting to find its way through. Clear skies are expected this afternoon, along with a high temperature of 44 degrees. A low of 30 will come later tonight. A gentle breeze coming from the east will blow across the area today as well. You're going to see clear skies tomorrow morning, but a few clouds will move into the area later in the afternoon. I don't believe that Saturday is going to be a good day to plan a picnic. Rain showers are in the forecast for the majority of the day. Another day of rain is expected on Sunday, so have an umbrella handy if you plan on getting out and about. This is Mason South for the News, 103.9, Loudwire Weather Center. Count on it.
In Irwin, it's partly cloudy and 40. In Greenville, it's partly cloudy and 36. In Johnson City, it's partly cloudy and 38.
What does it mean?
I've been meaning to give you this statistic from the Super Bowl. I love this stat. It's they're having the Eagles parade here, so I'll give you this stat. If Tom Brady had completed that final pass that he threw, the Hail Mary to Rob Gronkowski. By the way, do you see the idea that The Rock, and if you were here at the very start of the show, you heard this, The Rock and Sylvester Stallone are urging Rob Gronkowski to say, you don't want this football stuff, go into acting. Fred Dreyer always said it was tougher. He thought it was tougher to be on Hunter, to act, to be the lead with Stephanie Kramer on the old TV show Hunter, than it was to play in the NFL. And people were upset about that, but he would, the grind, you don't know what we do here as actors and all that. Let's see if I can get Fred Dreyer on the show. Because I have one great Fred Dreyer story. I'm at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's induction ceremonies. Jack Youngblood is getting inducted. So Fred Dreyer attends. He wants to see his old teammate inducted into the Hall of Fame, right? And it's great. But he's sitting, he doesn't have like primos. He's sitting among us, the fans and all that. He's just up there. I'm here for my teammate. If memory serves, I think he did have like a pass. I'm here for Youngblood, or if memory serves. But he was just there as like his friend, and he was around there, and so people say it's Fred Dreyer, and they're all signing autographs, kind of mobbed, and I just look up, and I'm sort of did not expect to see Fred Dreyer. Okay, so I'm down there looking. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you see me sort of looking down here. Fred Dreyer. There he is, right across this, and he's very gracious, and he's like, yeah, hello, and all this. And the only thing I can think to say, this is such a Marky Billson line, is, I love Stephanie Kramer on the Dukes of Hazzard. Which also elicited the same response right there. He cracked up. So I could make tough guy Fred Dreyer laugh. I feel that I've done something with my life now. Tri-City Sports now. I wanted to say that if Tom Brady, I've got to get to it. It's like, Billson, you're all the way around here. Come on now, Billson, what about the Tom Brady story? All right. If Tom Brady had completed that final pass to Rob Gronkowski, he would have had 556 passing yards in the game. That would have been a new NFL record. He threw for 505, which is a Super Bowl record. I'm talking about, can you imagine that? Setting the all-time passing record for yards in a game in the Super Bowl? Yeah, even if he didn't make the 2-point conversion, that'd be just another thing to say. Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. He set the 556. It would have been, the all-time record is 554. You know who holds it? I talk about this guy way too much. It's Norm Van Brocklin, who was the quarterback of the Eagles the last time previously they won the Super Bowl. What do you think about that? Hey, I want to tell you what I think. We were talking a little ETSU in this. We got to get to St. Mary's and who they're playing and all this. But I did want to say at the signing event over at the stadium that should be named after John Robert Bell, briefly spoke with Scott Carter. He was there, the AD. And I threw at him this idea that I've had for a while, you know, with people talking about Bristol Motor Speedway hosting another football game. And there was the mention from the officials at BMS that, yeah, we want to do this. And then the idea that they didn't say who would be playing or even what kind of a game it would be or what the event would really be. And if you remember, about 10 years ago when there was no football at ETSU, on TriCitiesSports.com, I wrote it was a column, it was a fictitious piece. I've talked about this story before. It was, a lot of people are going to remember this, where I wrote this story about what if ETSU had just beaten West Virginia instead of South Florida, which was actually at the time the number 2 team in the country. And they'd just beaten a top 10 West Virginia team that was really considered under Rich Rodriguez back then to be an elite power. By the way, West Virginia and Tennessee opening up in Charlotte to begin the next college football season. Anyway, but the idea is, what if this would have been ETSU? Far-fetched, you say? Well, I said not so much, because South Florida started their football program in 97, and in 96, ETSU had been a playoff football team in then Division I AA. What if, instead of after that saying, you know, we've got 5 years to make this program work, I don't know, you got to cut some costs here. What if instead they had built up the program? But the point had been that I said, you know, just 10 years ago, ETSU, which doesn't have football now, had a better program than South Florida, and certainly South Florida wasn't starting out in the Big East Conference. They were, you know, starting out in Division I AA, just like where, you know, ETSU was. So what if ETSU had made this climb? How would this be practical? And also, I must admit, being the former University of Pittsburgh Panthers sideline reporter, I knew that in 2001, to open up the season, ETSU had played Pitt and lost to them, and the next game was against actually South Florida, who then upset Pitt, and that was pretty much the game that said the old Big East Football Conference, they said, that convinced them that South Florida could play in their league. All right, you know, so they adopted South Florida as a member in a couple of years later. And I said, well, you know, what if things had been a little different? You know, what if ETSU had won that game? If they had built their program up, if they had had a vision for FBS, could they have been the team that would have knocked off West Virginia and not South Florida? And then I asked, well, again, what if? Where would they play? You know, you couldn't play in a mini dome. You got to draw 15,000 fans a game to be at that level. And there had been no Battle of Bristol, but everybody talked about it at the time. And I said, okay, why don't you play football game? I mean, you want to have these games at BMS so badly, and Tennessee at the time wasn't all that interested under that administration. Why don't ETSU take them up on the offer and schedule their own money games? In other words, all right, this will be our home venue. We're probably not going to sell 150,000 seats on every game, but we're trying to build a powerhouse team and sell tickets. why don't we, and I know this is easier said than done, but say to Notre Dame, hey, would you like to play here? And try to get that national following to come to the Tri-Cities, to go to the Country Music Museum, or, the cultural, go hiking and fishing. And I got a week out of it. Come on, come to East Tennessee. Beautiful, live as a hillbilly, that sort of thing. I mean, but enjoy the area for what it has to offer. Because obviously, if Notre Dame plays Miami, I mean, Notre Dame fans are going to Miami to go to the beach or to take part of the Miami nightclubs or whatever. Why couldn't you do that here, but different sort of environment, and try to schedule these teams? And maybe you did have to do a 2-for-1 or something like that to build your program, but you'd be building this, and you'd be giving the people of the Tri-Cities, admittedly with a poor sightline, but, major college football games right in their backyard. You could build ETSU up that way. That was my philosophy. And I went to him and I asked him, what about build your own money game? And, stating that, Phil Fulmer has said that he's not real keen on neutral site games, but home and homes. Why not that? And I asked, Scott Carter had been Tennessee administration for how long? Okay, why don't you take Tennessee up on that and say, look, here's an opportunity to play another game, a road game in state in front of 150,000 people again, and we'll do a home and home. What would that mean to the coffers? And I could tell that Carter hadn't really thought about that before, but I've thrown that out here before. I mean, to get to a higher level and to make the area more cosmopolitan and such. And even if Tennessee didn't want to do it, okay, well then have my idea. Schedule your own money game. Bring in Texas or Virginia Tech or Penn State or whoever that would draw. Ohio State, it's only 5 hours away. Got to go down 23, I guess you go to Bristol, you turn Kingsport and go down 81. But yeah, 5-hour drive on US 23. Johnson City or Irwin or wherever you are to Columbus. So. But we had that conversation, so I floated the idea to him. And now he told me when it came to money games, he does not want to accept a game in which ETSU has to fly. Says that when you have to fly to your money game, it costs anywhere up to $125,000. We're making $500,000 to play at Miami or Colorado State. I use those because those are the two money games that ETSU flew to back when Carter played for ETSU. And he says, then that's really taken up a lot of the money that we earned to schedule that game. So I want to play money games that one can bus to. That was one of the... So look for that in future schedules. And certainly when you see... next year ETSU playing Tennessee, but in future years, certainly Appalachian State, Vanderbilt, Georgia, North Carolina, all on the schedule. Those are games that one can bus to, and so it doesn't cost as much for ETSU, and they get to reap a maximum amount of profits. So don't expect to see... he did tell me that they, in 2001, they bused to Pitt. So, Ohio State would probably be in the mix, or so would Cincinnati as a potential. He even said, West Virginia maybe. But yeah, don't look for ETSU in their future money games than to go out and play Washington or Colorado State again, somebody like that they may have in the past. Never played Washington, but I'm just throwing that out there. Also, no word yet. Randy Sanders has not named an official starting date for spring practice or the spring game. Tennessee announced their orange and white game would be played 2 days ago. They said on April 21st for those who like to plan ahead. The release of the players that ETSU put out, and this is how I like to do recruiting, because I like to look through the bio and say, what stands out at me and what looks to be good. And, this, I think the recruiting rankings, how can you tell? I mean, it sounds good that Georgia got 8 5-star prospects. How do you know they're a 5-star prospect? As I said, John Kelly certainly worked out a heck of a lot better for Tennessee as a 3-star back than Bryce Brown. or Jalen Hurts. But anyway, so what does it all mean in the end? A couple of guys that were announced that I really were kind of was intrigued by. Jared Folks, linebacker, Marcus Satterfield, getting the old guys from Temple to come down here. But you know what? Getting somebody from the American Athletic Conference to go to the SoCon, that's a big positive. So Jared Folks, who, by the way, played 14 games for the Owls and had 32 tackles and was even an all-academic player, that was, that's a nice pickup right there. It's a guy you figure is going to play as a linebacker coming out. Or how about a guy like Drew Bowens from Palm Coast, Florida? You've probably never heard of Matanzas High School. I haven't. But you know what? He had 15 sacks his senior year. That's a school record. That sounds pretty good to me. Positive there. I've mentioned Julian Lane, who we had on the show on Monday. I think that he could start as a freshman, especially because the defensive backfield for ETSU is so porous. 5 defensive backs in the ETSU recruiting class of 24, at least. I mean, you've got athletes, so I suppose you could always switch somebody or whatever. One player I asked about at the press conference was Chandler Mullins from Elizabethton, who's a long snapper. And I theorized, could he be a walk-on? And they're saying, well, here, you're part of the class and all that. Local product, sounds good, And his brother, Adam, who, by the way, is a very friendly guy, very outgoing and all this, is currently the long snapper at ETSU. And Chandler Mullins is actually going to be getting a little bit of money. In other words, I think it was heavily implied, he didn't come out and say it, but head coach Randy Sanders heavily implied that Mullins would be getting a partial scholarship. So he said he would be getting a scholarship. And we had Randy Sanders on Tri-City Sports Now when he was hired, and I asked him, what about specialists? Would you give, you got 63 scholarships, would you give scholarships to specialists? He said, absolutely. And, not every coach believed in that. Lou Holtz didn't. Probably hurt him at the end. Probably hurt him in that game against Tennessee where, the kicker misses a 20-odd yard field goal at the end back in 91. Remember that? So, there you go. By the way, the other guy that ETSU got from Temple, and he was an early signing and part of the Marcus Satterfield connection. Satterfield, of course, played wide receiver on the 96 ETSU Buccaneers that made the college football playoffs, the then Division I AA playoffs, and beat Villanova in the first round before falling to Montana in the second. But Satterfield, who had been the offensive coordinator at Temple, well, he's the offensive coordinator now at ETSU. And Logan Marchie, remember him from the early signing period? He, transfer quarterback from Temple. There's going to be a battle for the quarterback position, I think, between him and the senior Austin Herrick, who, of course, was the representative for ETSU at the Randy Sanders press conference that introduced him as the head football coach. Yeah, it would be a real tough break if the senior Herrick lost his job to the Temple transferred Marchie. I'll give you that. And in fact, it would seem to be odd because Herrick would figure to be the team's best returning player. But Sanders saying, all jobs are open. Still, considering the early signings and all that, and in the recruiting class, I did want to say, and again, you look at guys who, their resume stands out to you, that sort of thing. So I'll give you an example. Somebody who might not stand out to us, and you hate to put an 0-2 count behind any recruit because you don't know. This guy may wind up breaking all of Mike Smith's linebacker tackle records. There's a linebacker from Gallatin, Tennessee, Jalen Porter. And what do they say about him? He's a linebacker. Well, he had a 52-yard touchdown run against Hendersonville, pretty good high school there, this past season. There are like 3 lines on his resume. And that's somebody you start saying, well, yeah, that's you're maybe a little skeptical about, somebody like that. But maybe you shouldn't, because you simply do not know what these guys are going to be doing. But the Herrick Marchie quarterback battle is going to be certainly a storyline that will be in August sports around here in the Tri-Cities. And I am looking through this, and sadly, I am not seeing what I had hoped to, because he's not included. Or is he? Oh, here he is. Cam Lewis. Yes, here he is. I was looking for that. Cam Lewis, who signed out of McDonough, Georgia, is an excellent multi-sport athlete. Look for Lewis, I think, to start probably by 2019 or so, if Marchie isn't the starting quarterback. Figure he'll redshirt this year. He's got a real nice resume, multi-sport guy, like I said. But 59 touchdowns, 49 for the year, 12 on the ground at his high school, Eagles Landing High School in McDonough, Georgia. I'll admit I don't know that much about it. But that guy had a nice resume. An early signing, you wonder if he wasn't told, yeah, you'll be our starter by the time you're, say, a redshirt sophomore or something like that. So remember the name for the future, Cam Lewis, for ETSU fans. ETSU fans are going to want to know the schedule of St. Mary's, because that's the only team that has a longer winning streak than the Buccaneers do after Ohio State defeated Purdue last night. I'll give you the St. Mary's schedule when we come back. It's Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson. Our final segment coming up after this.
What's the need to shop at Crabtree Buick